Hi, my 4B detectives. Happy Wednesday. Today is going to be our last science class until after spring break. I hope you're looking forward to it because after spring break, we're going to start learning about animals, and you're eventually going to get to do what's actually my favorite project of the entire year. You're going to get to do your animal project. But of course, before we get to that, we need to end our lessons with our plants and also end our egg week. So I have one more science demonstration to show you using this egg here, though I'm going to be using 2 eggs so I can show you what not to do in this. But hopefully you'll only need 1 egg for this demonstration. If you liked Monday's demonstration, I was happy to see a couple of you try it out. Thanks for sending me your pictures and videos. Totally try that at any family get-together or birthday party that you eventually get to have. I showed that trick to all of my cousins, my aunts, uncles, my friends, and they loved it. It's a really cool way to bring science into your everyday life. So I hope you are able to try it. For our planting today, I wanted to teach you how to move your plant over into a bigger space. So once a plant gets too big in its pot, for example, we're using the black pots, but this is the same size as the black pots we've been using. There's only so much space in these pots. And yes, they all have holes, hopefully, and the black ones that you're using do have holes at the bottom, but they're not as great as maybe an outside backyard or a bigger pot. Once your roots of your plant continue to grow, that way it's able to have your plant be, a seedling, which is a baby plant, and eventually grow into an adult plant. It needs more space to have its roots go out so that it can hold up that giant plant that it hopefully will get to turn into. And that's why I recommend getting a bigger pot. A bigger pot will have a bigger opening, it'll be taller and deeper so that there's more room for the roots to go down, if not out and sideways. But the bigger you put your pot in, if you only have a big pot, let's put them up for comparison. If you have a bigger pot, you're going to have a longer time now for your plant to grow in that one pot. Because if you kept going from small pot to medium pot to big pot, you'd be surprised that it would actually not take that long to go from the small to the big. The more room you give your plant to grow, the happier it'll be. And of course, it's going to want to grow bigger. If you keep it in a small pot forever, eventually it's going to get so cramped that it'll stop growing. And it'll stay the way it is. It might, drop a few leaves, but it will grow the leaves back. So that's if you want to keep a mini plant. If you want to see just how big your plant can go, try moving up to a new pot. I'm going to skip moving up to the medium pot, and I would go to this big pot so that all of my seed plants, which I would maybe put all of them together, I don't know, they might have to fight for room, my plants would have more deep space and wide space to grow their roots. Now, if you don't have any pots, but you do have a back or front yard, especially a garden, then you're able to plant your plant outside. I have to do a little searching because my backyard at my new house is really only grass. There's no good place to bury the roots for my plant, and I want mine to really grow well. So I'm going to have to do some detective work and go search for that. If you do have soil, this would be perfect because now that your plant's been growing for 3 weeks now, it's about time that you start giving it a new, push up, a new pump up to get it excited. And one way you can do that is giving it fresh soil or fertilizer. If you have any plant food, that's the time to give it to them. So I'm going to get a chance to go replant mine, and I'll show you how to do that using my bean plants, okay? After we're done that, you'll get to see my demonstration where I throw this egg at a wall. And Well, hopefully it won't break. If it does break, thankfully I have my second egg and I'm going to be throwing that at a towel. Okay, let's go. Okay, so here I am ready to go ahead and plant my bean plant. I'm going to be planting my bigger bean plant because I think it would be fun to see it grow in this big pot. I would love to see it outside, but this thing already started in a closet, so I think it's not in any rush to get outside. My smaller bean plant, which thankfully is finally growing up, I'm going to be putting that outside once I find a good spot. Make sure that your soil is in a place where it will be getting rained on, but it will be getting sun. Hopefully not too much sun because we don't want to burn or we don't want to burn our plant. Really, that's it. So what you need in order to plant is you need that to make sure that you have the perfect pot. My pot doesn't have any holes at the bottom, so I'm going to have to water it as little as possible. Because if you don't have a hole at the bottom, it's not going to be able to drain out. One way that you can stop that from happening is actually putting rocks on the bottom. That way the water will be down with the rocks instead of getting trapped in the soil, which is causing, from what I hear from some of you, mold to come out. Yeah. So another thing that I learned is you can actually drill a hole through the bottom of your pot, which is what I did to some of my other pots here in my house. So that's another thing you can do. You're going to need to make sure you get soil, and I got soil that works for all types of plants. I have an old planting pot here, and I'm going to just keep pouring it in until there's about enough that my plant will still reach the top. It'll be at the base of my soil. So I'm going to put enough soil in at the bottom so that my roots can eventually grow through them. The bigger the roots and the further out your roots go, the bigger your plant will be able to grow, both tall-wise and hopefully leaning out-wise. Now, I'm starting to get a little too much soil, I think. I'm going to pat it down a little bit using the bottom here. And if I were to put in my pot, it would be about the right size. So this is where you have to be very careful. You are actually going to not be planting this black pot in here. You are going to need to take out your plant very carefully. You can gently tug on it a little bit because if it is root bound, which means its roots have spread out, you should be able to pull it out pretty easily. If not, try and squeeze your pot a little bit and boom, there we have it. If you look here, I'll show it so both cameras can see. You'll see that the bean plant's roots have completely filled up my cup so that no matter where I pour water, they'll be able to suck it up. And look, there's even some dangling down. Now that my plant's not going to be root bound, which means its roots have a place to grow now, it's going to just soar and get incredibly big. But if you look here, I got empty space around my plants. So I'm going to need to fill in that space now with the new soil. I can't exactly get brand new soil for where my plant already grew because it's attached to that soil. And the roots have actually kind of made a sort of fence, I guess, or like a wall around that soil, trapping it in there. So you're going to go ahead and fill up the areas around your pot. I'm going to speed mine up, okay? Okay, so now that I have went all around my plant, I'm going to use my hands, since I can't exactly use the pot anymore, to push down the soil. You want the soil to be still fluffy at the top, but I wanted it to be pat down, so if maybe I blew on it or something, all the soil is not going to fly out. I'm not filling it up to the top of my pot. It's going about this much before I start to the top of my pot. And I actually covered up the top of my soil completely from my old pot here. And that's just to kind of bury it deep and to make it nice and strong. Because as you can see, these two plants have gotten so big, but they weren't able to hold themselves up because maybe their roots weren't as strong as the other two that were more in the middle of my pot and were able to shoot up. But it's nice. You can see they all have green leaves now, and they all have green stems. This one's working a little bit more on getting a green stem. Well, that's how you pot your plant into a bigger pot, my friends. And as soon as you pot it, make sure that you give it a little bit of water, just so the old soil and the new soil can meet together, okay? So I hope you enjoy potting it, and I'm going to go search for some soil outside. Okay. All right, 4B detectives. Now, I went outside and I looked everywhere I could in my backyard. And as I told you, my backyard, it's really not that great for planting. You need some good soil. So I went for a little walk, I went for a little drive, and I decided, what do you do when you can't figure out how to solve a problem on your own? Well, you go to your parents for help. Hi! Hi! Woohoo! So I walked around my parents' backyard and they helped me find a perfect spot for my bean plant to grow. What you're going to need is a shovel or whatever you call this to dig out a nice space to kind of take the place of your pot. Then, like you did in the other video, or well, the other part of the video, you're going to have to squeeze and then lightly tug on your plant so that you can pull it out of this pot and put it in your new hole. Now, I'm going to try and do this as fast as I can because I don't have sunglasses on, and like you know from my last video, Miss Remitz without sunglasses doesn't go too well. So, you need to make sure that you dig a nice spot. We went ahead and dug out some of the leaves and we raked our spot so that we could get a nice area with clean soil and not many, bugs or leaves to get in the way. Once you've dug deep enough, and deep enough being enough to fit in your bean plant the way it is, just like we did with the pot, then you'll be able to put in your plant. Some good advice I got from my father, who is a nice little gardener. He said you want to make sure there's enough room to go around your plant, which is kind of what we did in the pot anyway, so I kind of already knew that. You're going to squeeze out your plant a little bit, and like I said, gently tug. I'm not ripping it out. Once again, you can see here, not as many as the other plants, since there were 4 bean plants in that one. The roots are still going around here. That means it's time to spread our wings and fly. So I'm going to go ahead and put it in my hole, and then using the soil that I dug up earlier, I'm going to push it back into my hole, nice around it so that it has enough to hold it steady. And remember what I said, it's okay to do a little bit on top of the start of the plant, so that's kind of giving a nice new bed for your plant to grow through. Hopefully your soil's a little moist, not too moist. Remember what we read about in our read aloud with the teacher who had her own garden. She said make sure it's a little moist to start your plant off. Pat it a little bit with your hands. Hopefully you have gloves. I took mine off for some reason. And it'll be enough to have a little air going through to get to your plant. Hopefully it doesn't rain so that we get to keep going outside, but now instead of you watering your plant, it's kind of up to the rain. So if it doesn't rain for a while, come outside and check up on your plant. But other than that, it's time to say goodbye to my plants and thank you for growing with me. Bye, detectives. And we are back. Hello, 4B detectives. Now we're moving on from our plants and heading over to Egg Week. So today for Egg Week, I'm going to be showing you another example of a demonstration. A demonstration is a type of science project. There's 3. Let's look at them. Types of science projects. Observations, which is what you did with your plants. You grew your plant, And then you watched it to see how it grew. And you took notes, you drew pictures, but you weren't really changing anything. Then there's an experiment, which is what I did with my 2 plants. Had one out normally with getting normal sun and normal water, and then I had one in a closet getting some water, some attention, but no light. And I was able to see if changing that would do anything to my plants. The third type is the type we're going to be doing today and the type we did on Monday, a demonstration. A demonstration is when you pick one part of science and you try to teach it. On Monday, I taught you about systems, a network, and even a little bit of gravity. And I showed that to you by having my egg stay in the air once I chopped out everything and watching it fall into the water. I was able to do that by putting together my system beforehand. And I was able to do that thanks to gravity pulling down the egg for me so I didn't have to touch it. That's an example of a demonstration teaching you something in science by showing it to you. Today I'm going to do another demonstration. For this demonstration, I have some parts that I need. I need my egg, though I will be using 2 to show you both parts of the science demonstration. I'm going to need a towel. If you don't have a towel, you can use a blanket, a sheet, something like that. And I'm going to need a wall. To be able to hold up my things, I'm going to need something heavy. So if you have tape, or if you have duct tape, or if you have something like a heavy pot or cup that you can put on top, as long as it doesn't break, then you'll be able to hold up your towel when you try this at home. All right, let's look at our demonstration. Okay, detectives, so here we are for Egg Week, and today's demonstration is going to be on force. You've probably heard someone say the word force to you before. Maybe you spoke really meanly and they said you spoke very forcefully, or maybe you hit someone really hard and they said, ow, you hit me with a lot of force, or that was a really force hit that you did. That's an example of force, but the science way of force, or at least showing and explaining it, is that force is the strength that you hit something with or you get hit by something with. And so in this case, we're talking about the soft, sweet, very fragile egg going up against the hard wall. Now, when you think of an egg, you might think of Humpty Dumpty. How Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall, Humpty Dumpty had a great fall, and he broke and shattered, and they tried to put him back together again. We know that eggs break very easily. If I were to even just hit this with my finger or drop it down, it would crack and ooze out. But what if I showed you that depending on what you do with force, you could throw this and not break it? Well, if I throw it against the wall, we're going to see what happens. We're also going to see what happens if I hold up my towel and throw it at the towel. Now, knowing that when an egg hits something hard, it breaks, my prediction is that it's going to break against the wall. But when it comes to something, sure, it's soft, but I could have a hard blanket, it wouldn't even matter. When you put this up against the wall like this, it's just covering the wall a little bit. What if I were to pull it back so it kind of created a little bit of a slide? Now I'd have to be careful that my egg didn't slide down and hit the floor, but could it almost go against the force? Instead of hitting the wall hard, it would kind of catch the egg right before it hits the wall. If I use this towel, that is. I'm curious to see what happens with our eggs. I'm going to be using 2 in case one of them breaks, but I'm also going to be using these paper towels here because with my prediction of it breaking when it hits the wall, I definitely need something to clean up. All right, let's set up and get chucking. Okay, I went ahead and taped it up some paper towels to this, and now I'm going to show you what happens when you break an egg, or try to break an egg by throwing it at a wall. I gotta be careful not to get splashed, right? Ta-da! Did you see that coming? When I threw the egg at the wall, it shattered both when it hit the wall and when it fell to the ground. Now, I have one more egg left. I really don't want this egg to break. I'll run out of food, I'll run out of paper towels trying to clean it up. But you can see that I need to do something to mess with the force. When I threw it, it hit the wall because the wall was a hard surface. When you hit that, there was nothing to swallow it up. Like I said with Monday's egg dropping, it got swallowed up by the water instead of it falling and hitting the bottom of the cup. So that is an example of force and beating it by going against force, by having something soft there to cushion the fall. If you were to jump into a pool, or if you were to stand up and jump up, you can practice this at home by standing up. If you don't bend your knees when you jump, it'll be a lot of force on your knees and it can hurt you. Ow. But if I jump and bend my knees, there's less force taking on my knees, and therefore it's not hurting my knees as much as if I kept them straight. That's what we're trying to do today with our eggs. Let's look at our board real quick. And while I have that broken egg behind me, we're just going to talk about our, demonstration real quick and what we saw. So when I threw the egg pretty hard at the wall, it both hit here and when it hit the ground, it broke. And we had a broken egg and a little bit running down the wall. So we know that was full force. Now we're going to put the towel out. I am going to move it a little bit since I can't tape a towel to the wall. But how you're going to hold your blanket, your sheet, your towel is having it both on the table or the wall that you're using, and then you're going to have it come out a little bit so that you can catch your egg so it doesn't hit the floor. This is going to show you that you won't break your egg because it's going to not hit the wall with full force. It's going to get caught in the blanket and roll down to be nice and safe. So instead of seeing this, my goal is to show you this. The egg hitting here and therefore not hitting the wall with full force. So it's getting soft force, or it's getting swallowed up. Kind of the same thing as if I jumped and bent my knees, and it's going to safely roll down here and stay nice and happy at the bottom of my towel. And I'll be able to eat this for breakfast another day. So let's go ahead and get started looking at the second part of our demonstration. Okay, so I'm going to use my freshly planted bean sprout to hold up my towel. Now I'm here at my house alone, so I'm not able to have someone help me hold this. You being at home, I would really hope that you can ask a parent or a sibling, a cousin, whoever's there, maybe even a grandparent, to hold on to the blanket while you're throwing it. That way you can have a lot of fun with it and see how hard you can throw it. I promise you that you could stand far away from this and boom, peg your egg at it and it will not break. Or you could be really soft with it and lob it, just kind of throw it a little softly, and it still won't break. That's because just like a pool, just like you bending your knees when you jump, this towel is going to swallow up my egg because it's not full force on a hard surface. Having a softer surface or taking up all that force by bending your knees, giving yourself time to calm down or time to recover in this case, is going to cause it to not have enough force. It'll be soft, it'll be swallowed up, and it won't break or get hurt. Like I said, I'm going to hold this a little bit so it's kind of like a slide. That way, even once I throw it, it's not going to break by falling to the floor. Hopefully, mine doesn't get mixed up by me doing this on my own. But you can see the wall is still there, or in this case, my oven. But I'm going to throw my egg now. Ba-bum! There you have it. And now I'll try and throw it a little harder. Ready? Nice. Now I'll try and throw it a little harder. Wow, I am pegging this blanket. You should see how many throws you can do before you get tired. Boom! I even threw it down this time. I'll throw it closer to the wall. I even heard it kind of hit that. Let's see if my egg's okay. Look, the towel kept my egg from getting cracked. And I hope you heard it too. I heard the boom of the towel, or at least the egg, hitting the oven. Now, if you had a friend or someone there to help hold on to this, you could hold a bigger sheet, or you could have two people hold it on each side. They'll hold the top and they'll hold the bottom corner. That way it can roll down. But seriously, see how hard you can throw this egg, because you are going to demonstrate to whoever you're with that when you have something hard that won't suck in that force, yeah, it's going to break. But if you have something literally softer, but also something that can swallow up that force of you throwing your egg, it's going to be fine, and you're going to have another egg science magic trick up your sleeve. All right, my friends, that's all for me today. Happy Wednesday, happy science, and I look forward to teaching you science when we come back from spring break. Bye!